Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So, social media links will be provided along with my email, Substack, and everything else. And ratings are greatly appreciated. So, please give me a rating on all of the podcast platforms that I'm on. It'd be greatly appreciated. And questions, comments, concerns, send me an email. So, audio platforms. Right now, that I'm expanding, but the audio platforms that I'm on, I am on Audible, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify for podcasters, and as I mentioned, I'm looking and I'm expanding to grow on all of the major podcast platforms and outlets. All right, so this episode is all about the Mamas and the Papas songs. All right, so here we go. Let's dive in. Okay, looking through my window. So it was part of the album Deliver of 66, charted 24 in the U.S. And before I get into this song, I think it's very interesting because there's another song like this. It's about the interpersonal relationships between the two main band members. And the other song that I'm going to get into that relates to this is interesting how interpersonal relationships that are going wrong leak out into bands when it happens, and all these different interesting dynamics come out, and these different interesting type of styles of music come out. So, for instance, what leads into what it was talked about in this other song, Fleetwood Mac, how Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, their trial and up and down and the problems with their relationships, how that shaped their band and their music, and how all of these songs that came out of these issues, it had terms about reflecting and understanding your own mortality. For instance, the epitome, I think, of it is changes. And how what I'm remembering is Stevie Nicks was saying when the band was first starting out and everything, she was talking about her perspective of how waiting and being left behind and wanting and belonging and feeling the frustrations of seeing the momentum of the band and the frustrations with relationship with Lindsey Buckingham and her, and then him counteractive and coming out with all the different songs that came out. I'm trying. Let me sit here and think about. Never break the chain, and all of these things. It's very interesting. So, this was the first single released from the folk rock group's third album. The song was written by John Phillips in '64 after a brief separation from his future wife, Michelle. He assumed she was out in California with her new lover, but in reality, she was in Greenwich Village, blocks away from his house. All right, so California Dreaming. If You Can Believe Your Eyes was a part of that album of '66. It charted 9 in the UK and 4 in the US. In 2002, an interview with National Public Radio, NPR, Michelle Phillips explains how this song came about. It was '63, and she was newly married to John Phillips. They were living in New York City, which was having now this isn't the particular song that I'm referring to with what they said about Fleetwood Mac, but I'll get to that. So, and she was newly married to John Phillips, as I mentioned, and they were living in New York City, which has having a particular cold winter, they were having a particular cold winter, at least by Michelle's standards, as she was from California. John would walk around the apartment at night working out tunes, and one morning brought the first verse of the song to Michelle. It was a song about longing and to be in another place, and it was inspired by Michelle's homesickness. Michelle enjoyed visiting churches, and a few days before, she and John visited St. Patrick's Cathedral, which inspired the second verse, stopped into a church. John hated the verse as he was turned off to churches by unpleasant memories of particle school. But he couldn't think of anything better, so he left it in. This is a rare pop song that contains a flute solo. Even more surprising, it's an alto flute, which is larger than a regular flute, and which has a lower register. A jazz player named Bud Sanka was brought to the session to play it. Sanka, who also played saxophone, had a minor hit with his version of the Beatles' Michelle in '66. He died in 2009 at the age of 82. The Mamas and the Papas recorded this song in L.A. at the United Western Recorders, in the same studio where the Beach Boys recorded their Pet Sounds album. Musician on the session, which took place number 4 and 65, where some of the great sessions players of the era were reined in. Hal Blaine, drums, Larry Kitchentell, I believe, keyboards, Joe Osborne, bass, and P.F. Sloan, guitar. John Phillips also played guitar on the track. That's him on 12 strings during the intro. The engineer on the track was Bones Howe. This session was the first that Blaine, Kitchentell, and Osborne all played on together. In an interview with P.F. Sloan, he talked about recording the track. The California Dreaming session was magical. John Phillips was very nervous. Nobody particularly liked the song. And to be honest with you, California Dreaming was maybe 3 or 4 chords. I added the walk, don't run, virtue guitar riffs for that da-da-da-da-da-da. That was all creative work inside the studio when I heard them singing on the mic. I recorded them with Barry McGuire on his second album, so I knew how they were. So I saw her again. This was part of the Mamas and the Papas 1966 album. It charted 11 in the UK and 5 in the US. The song was written by John Phillips, the leader of Mamas and the Papas, about the affair between his wife, Michelle Phillips, and Denny Dorhe, also a member, which ultimately led to Michelle Phillips' unceremonious dismissal from the band and John and Michelle's divorce. Ironically enough, Dorhe received a songwriting credit. The session for this album must have been as uncomfortable as were the sessions when Fleetwood Mac was recording the Rumors album 10 years later, and in the personal relationships in that band were imploding. Lou Adler produced this song, and Bones Howe was the engineer for the session. According to Bones, the part around 2:45 mark where I saw her is repeated twice was a happy accident, said Bones. We were purchasing vocals, And when we came to that part where the rhythm stops and the group goes, I saw her again last night. I just punched it in early. They came in early, and so we stopped. And then when we went back and started again, and I punched it in at the beginning of the vocal, they started 2 bars later, or whatever it was. And when I played it back, the vocal, the vocal went, I saw her again. It was a mistaken punch. And Lou said, I love it. Leave it in. It was an error. It was a mistake. Quite interesting how flukes tend to be the staple of songs sometimes. But Lou was wise enough. It caught his ear and he left it in. And I learned something from that. You go with your gut. If something catches, they could be there. Are wonderful mistakes that happen in the studio. And you have to learn to catch those when they happen and use them. All right, Monday. This part of the album, If You Can Believe Your Eyes, of 66. So this one charted 3 in the UK and 1 in the US. While waiting for the release of California Dreaming, band member Denny Dorhe was the songwriter. John Phillips was the songwriter, and John Phillips would come up with the new material. Phillips said he would come back into the morning with a song with universal appeal. Ignoring the sarcastic comments from the group members, Phillips came up with Monday. It's about the lousy feeling that comes with the end of the weekend and beginning of another work week. I think it's very insightful to include these sort of things, and by including these sort of things to be more relatable to people, how work, the realities of work, it can, how even though, of course, all the wonderful benefits of working, particularly working a 9-to-5 job, a full-time job that is, benefits and all that, and how working hard and being a productive member of society and putting your output and providing and taking care of, if you have a family, and then if you don't have a family, taking care of yourself, being sustainable. But within that, it can be, it can weigh on you at certain points, and you just need a break and a release. It's very interesting that they were attempting to embody that in this song. All right, so let's get back into this. So in a Songfacts interview, Alan Merrill relates the story of how his cousin, the noted songwriter Laura Nyro, got interviewed to the Monterey Pop Festival, which was her first major live appearance. She hung up and told the news to her cousin Alan, who asked, "That's great, isn't it?" Nyro responded, "No, I never done a gig. All I've done is recording." She had great anxiety about not having her own stage act. The anxiety, together with the personal problems of the Mamas and the Papas, Dorothy was drinking heavily at the time and trying to get over Michelle's with the affair, might have contributed to the gloomy atmosphere cast over the Monterey Festival, which had a dismissal review. Which leads into what I was saying earlier about the issues, about the issues with the fleeting producer, all these kind of things. It's very interesting how they all intermingle and how it's outlined and said into this interview. This was the first Hot 100 chart topper with a day in the week in the title. And the only one with Monday, Manic Monday by the Bangles, and Rainy Days and Mondays by the Comforters both sailed at number 2. Denny Dorhe, who sang lead on the song for the Mamas and the Papas, thought very little of Monday Monday when they recorded it. Nobody likes Monday, so I thought it was just a song about the working man, he said. Nothing about it stood out to me. It was dumb. Effing song about a day of the week. As you can imagine, he was taken by surprise when the song became a huge hit. Dorhe wasn't alone in his disdain. Mama Cass and Michelle Phillips didn't like the song either, and John Phillips claimed he had no idea what the song meant. The Mamas and the Papas used top-tier Los Angeles studio musicians on their recordings. On this track, Larry Ketchentell played keyboards, Joe Osborne played bass, Hal Blaine was on drums, and P.F. Sloan played guitar. Sloan was the baby of the bunch, just 20 years old when the song was released. He describes its way as a magical session and says that he gave Blaine the idea for the drum riff based on a song P.F. had worked on when he was a member of the Grassroots. Sloan used a tremolo effect on his guitar part, which he overdubbed later. And I think it's very interesting, despite the fact that the group, which I just now and understanding this, that the group, most of the group didn't like the song, but it's still the ones that did understand encompassing the things of the importance of what I was saying about the working life. Very interesting. And it's I always say, if you're open to learn something new every day, you definitely do. All right, so this wraps up the end. This is the end of the Harboring Light. And questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to email me or find me and comment, write to me, send me a message on Substack. So, next week, and will be the end of wrapping up talking about American folk artists, and then after that week, I'm going to get into international folk artists. So next week, I'm going to talk about Susan Vega. I'm going to talk about Shel Silverstein. And then I'm going to also talk about Tracy Chapman and give, of course, my perspectives about all of that. And so when I get into the international folk artists, I'm going to also give more of an insight of how and what I think about these things from an American perspective. And then please, fill in. Give me thoughts, concerns through email and, questions, everything. Hey, I think you should say this. Feel free. And so also on the near future, I'm working on that for merchandise. And I would like to hear from you all. I'd like to know what you all would like and think. So if you like sweaters, well, not sweaters. Let me dive back. Hoodies, mugs, shirts, let me know. And also, maybe talking about all of these international and American artists is leading towards me talking about all of you wonderful listeners, the culture from all of the states and countries that you come from. Now, I've already started that, talking about these things, writing about these things, for particularly on Substack. So I'm almost wrapping up with all of the readers that I have on Substack, where they are from. And so I'm going to, of course, talk about all that when this reaches the end, about all of y'all. All right. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye-bye now.